All right, there's the countdown. We are waiting for another batch of closings, and this will bring us to battleground Nevada, which is our last battleground state we've not heard from, or the last to close the polls. NBC News can make a projection now in the state of Utah. NBC projects that Donald Trump will win in Utah and take those 7 electoral votes. And we go further into the west, into Montana. 4 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the projected winner in Montana tonight. Here's the map. The road to 270. Donald Trump now with 201. Harris with 81. That's the road to 270.
Well, let's put Nevada up on the map here. It is, as you might expect, too early to call. And if you remember, in 2020, we didn't get a result in Nevada until Saturday, so we could be waiting a while. In fact,
we remember.
Oh, we remember. You can send your mail bell.
Exactly.
Don't even bring it up. They said
up.
everyone's triggered here. Okay, Pennsylvania, too close to call. Got to say, that was a Saturday call as well in 2020. Michigan, too close to call there. Let's see how much vote we've gotten, though, at this hour. Just 16%, so there's a lot of vote to be counted there. We'll move over to the state just nearby, Wisconsin, the other industrial Midwest battleground. 35% in. They are making some progress, but too close to call. Georgia, too close to call, but we are getting to a much higher number. We can get down into the counties in just a bit with Tom Llamas. He's right over there. North Carolina as well, starting to count more vote, too close to call. And finally, out west, the great battleground state of Arizona, too close to call. That's another one that may take several days before we get results. So let's go to Tom. And I mean, Pennsylvania, we cannot talk about it enough. It may all hinge on Pennsylvania, just as it did in 2020.
Yeah, and earlier I was talking about Eastern PA. Guys, not to talk about Western PA. Go Steelers fans. Let's start in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County here. 66% of the vote, and let's compare it to 2020. Slightly overperforming. That's good news for Harris, because that's what she needs to do there if she wants to win the state of Pennsylvania. And look at this. Butler County, you'll remember, that's where that first assassination attempt took place, just miles from Pittsburgh. Look what a different place this is. Trump is on top. 71% of the vote is in. He got 65 in 2020, 65%. He's now at 64. He's essentially performing where he needs to be. I also want to see how the vote is in these Western communities, Western PA communities, because fracking was a big issue here. Vice President Harris had to change her position on that. Washington County, right here on the border, Trump with 60% of the vote. Let's see how he did compared to 2020. It's about the same. Westmoreland, right next to here, it butts up against Allegheny County. 47% of the vote is in. He's at 65. So he's kind of where his marks were in 2020. Remember, he has to do a little bit better. Erie's the one that we're going to be watching. This is the big swing county. We only have 1% in. The reason why we're watching this is because Erie almost always picks the winner of the election here. But we only have 1% in Erie County. But we'll be watching that. Let's move east now, because I know we have a lot of people from the Philadelphia area on the anchor desk tonight. See what's happening over there. Let's start in Chester County. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick whip around here. 2020, remember. So Harris has to drive up the vote in the suburbs just like Biden did and try to turn out that vote in Philadelphia County. So Chester's one of those ring counties. Let's move over to Delaware County here. She's overperforming there. Only a quarter of the votes in. Let's get to Philadelphia County here. 79%. She's going to want to increase those numbers. Again, we're still waiting on a lot of the vote. It's still very early. Remember, some of these counties are going to report late. 28% in, 69% overperforming there. This is where Governor Shapiro is. You may remember that. She closed out her final ad sitting right next to Governor Shapiro, making sure the people of Pennsylvania saw that. And then I want to park on Bucks for a while, and then I want you guys to talk a little bit about Bucks. 24% in, but this is the county, the ring county around Philadelphia, one of those collar counties that Republicans thought they could make some inroads here. More working class than some of those neighboring suburb areas, counties. They say Southern Bucks might be a little bit more Trump country. That may have changed this election. We're going to have to wait and see. But you can see here the numbers aren't as high as they were, with 24% in, 56% of the vote. Trump's going to have to try to run up the vote a little bit here if he wants to do better. I'm going to look at one more area before I send it to you guys. This is the swing here. Northampton almost always picks the winner in Pennsylvania. This is Easton. This is Bethlehem. That's that whole Lehigh Valley area there. Biden was at 49. Harris is right there. Look, guys, it's tough to draw any kind of information on who's on top or who's lower right now. Still too close to call. Trump's on top, but only about 17,000 votes. You remember the spread in 2020 was about 80,000 votes. So a lot of votes still out here. One thing I do want to mention, there was an exit poll out of Pennsylvania on Latino voters, and they broke for Trump in a major way. That could possibly be a deciding effect here in Pennsylvania, because you're talking about 600,000 Latinos that are registered to vote. Guys, back to you.
Can we talk a minute about the amount of money that is spent in some of these races? Pennsylvania, I'm just looking here, Pennsylvania, Biden-Harris plus the DNC, $131.7 million.
Yeah, $314 million, I think, overall, when you add both campaigns together.
It's $1 billion if you throw in the Senate race.
That's right. That's right.
No, on one state.
Yeah.
I remember making a big deal like 12 years ago. We had $1 billion presidential campaign. One state.
Isn't that so funny? Because it started out as a tie, and now tonight we're ending up, and it's a tie right now. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we're going to be living and breathing Pennsylvania.
That's interesting, though, what Tom just mentioned about the exit poll. And again, do your caveats, but for Trump to win the Hispanic vote in Pennsylvania would be pretty huge, because there's a big Hispanic population in Pennsylvania, especially in that Lehigh Valley.
That's right. There's a big Puerto Rican population in Pennsylvania, too, the most of any battleground. So let's talk about where that is. And I want to start with the national Latino vote here. And Savannah, love you for the grain of salt caveat. We know that these exit polls could shift a little bit. But here's what's so interesting here. It is Kamala Harris, of course, the vice president, who is winning the Latino vote over former President Trump, 53% to 45%. This is nationwide. But the number that you want to look at is this 45%. That is because of the overperformance of former President Trump nationally among the Latino vote. And you can see it here. He's 45% this year. 2020, I mean, this is a double-digit plus overperformance from where he was just 4 years ago. And if you get into some of these key battlegrounds, Tom mentioned Pennsylvania. We were just talking about Nevada. Looking at my clock where the polls closed like 7 minutes ago. It is a similar story here. If we can pull up Nevada, you can see Latino voters, about 17% of the electorate there, broke for Kamala Harris, 48% to Donald Trump, 46%. But again, it's about the overperformance. He is doing better with this group than he did 4 years ago, again, by a double-digit margin over the course of 4 years. So as I walk back to the desk, I will tell you, this is something, and Chris and I know will back me up on this, as we've been talking to our sources around the Trump campaign. What did we hear again and again? That they thought they were going to overperform with Black and Latino voters. Latino men, an interesting and important story here tonight, guys.
I want to bring in someone from our insider's desk right now. Jim Messina was campaign manager for President Obama's re-election in 2012. Jim, what are you seeing here right now? And what are each of the sides telling themselves based on this data? Yeah,
it's a great question. So Tom just showed the most important two counties that I'm following in Pennsylvania. Early vote in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, better for Harris than expected. Then you look at Bucks County. When I was Obama's campaign manager, I was obsessed with Bucks County. And so far, it's looking like very early numbers, but she's doing really, really well. We've talked about the Latino vote. That is a very scary number for the Harris campaign, and they're going to want to do better. But the thing around the exits that we haven't talked enough about is really the senior vote. Kamala Harris is doing better with white seniors in the exit polls and in some of the early results than expected, than a little bit better than even Joe Biden. You'd rather have those much more high propensity voters and a lot of a bigger overall number with those seniors. So those are three things that I'm seeing very early that make her campaign pretty happy. But in general, Trump is running up numbers in rural better than he did in 2020, which has to concern the Harris campaign. And we talked a lot about young men who were breaking for Trump. We saw the MAGA hats at some of the long lines at the universities. Yep. Is that unexpected to the level of the lines you're seeing? I think both sides have a little bit of excitement here. I've talked to Harris officials in the last hour who say, look at the lines in Penn State, look at the lines in Arizona, look at the lines in the Philly college campuses. They feel really good about their ground operation. They have the best ground operation person in American politics, and Jen O'Malley Dillon is the chair, who has built a $1 billion field campaign for this moment, and they're really going for it on the college campuses, and they kind of need it right now. Jim Messina, good to see you. Thank you.
All right, we've got a winner to announce. Kamala Harris takes Colorado as expected. Used to be a battleground years and years ago, but has really trended to the Democrats in the last couple of presidential cycles. And here's how it shakes out. With 54% of the vote counted in Colorado, they vote by mail, and those ballots get to be counted quite quickly. So we see that Kamala Harris will take Colorado, so we can fill out the map just a little bit more as we lay out the road to 270. But those big battleground states, we have yet to call one of the battleground states for Kamala Harris. Right now, her best path remains those 3 industrial Midwest states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Donald Trump flirting with Georgia and North Carolina and perhaps Arizona and Nevada. It'll be a while before we get results there. We've got Garrett Hake, who is at Trump headquarters in West Palm. And Garrett, what's the mood there? What are you hearing?
Savannah, I've been talking to Trump campaign officials, and look, we all know the cliche on election days where you hear campaign sources say they're feeling cautiously optimistic. What has happened in the last half hour is my sources have stopped using the word cautious to describe their optimism. They are feeling increasingly confident as more and more votes come in, despite the fact that no battlegrounds have been called, that their theory of the case is being proven correct. And what I mean by that is the Trump campaign set out at the beginning of this race to expand the Republican Party. They knew they couldn't win with their old coalition. They had to get more younger voters, more black voters, more Latino voters, even by small amounts to join their coalition. In the battleground states, they are seeing that happen. And if it does happen, it would be a historic realignment of the parties. Now, again, none of these battlegrounds have been called, but with all the battleground, states now closed, the voting is done, except for the folks who are waiting in line. They feel like there's not much else left for them to do but watch and wait in an increasingly optimistic atmosphere, both here at West Palm Beach and at Mar-a-Lago, where Trump and his closest allies, friends, and family are watching the results come in. Savannah.
All right. Thank you, Garrett.
All right. Let's go with Peter Alexander now. He's with the Harris campaign in Washington, D.C. What's the optimism level there tonight?
Well, I think there's certainly a level of anxiety, at least according to some of the Harris allies with whom I've been speaking to over the course of the last hour or so. One ally telling me that, just look at the state of North Carolina. Josh Stein, the Democrat, winning his effort to become the state's governor. That we were able to project a while back, but obviously not the same for Kamala Harris, at least not yet. That indicates that there's clearly some split ticket voters there. Some folks who will be voting for Josh Stein as governor, but then Donald Trump as president. Otherwise, we would have a projection already in that state right now. They say that is an indicator that gives some anxiety right now going forward that North Carolina may not be a state that they're able to win. If that happens, and these are all ifs, it's all very early here, that does again shrink their path to victory to 270. They really are relying heavily on those blue wall states right now. And one of those key states obviously is Pennsylvania, the biggest prize of them all with 19 electoral votes. I spent many of the last several days up there, and I was in the urban centers where the Harris campaign put a lot of its energy, including in Philadelphia, and particularly in places like Philadelphia, where they were sending buses up there to knock on doors to help swell the number. They're really relying on big numbers in places like Philadelphia and the collar counties that surround it. They need to run up the numbers among some of those suburban women in particular, the suburbs more broadly right now, and in Philadelphia. So that's where a lot of them are hanging their hat, at least according to the allies I'm speaking to right now. We're going to keep a close eye on that as this night progresses.
All right, Peter Alexander, thanks very much. I think we have a call now in the Texas Senate race. NBC News projects that Ted Cruz will retain his seat again in Texas. Democrats have taken some big swings in recent years in Texas, but unable to land a haymaker. Colin Allred will come up short tonight in his bid to unseat Ted Cruz.
Let's go to Chuck on this because, Texas is the white whale for Democrats. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic campaign committee, threw money in Texas at late in the game, thinking maybe there was something going on there. Texas has a very restrictive abortion ban, as we know.
The Democratic Party went way late into both of those two races. They were sent a signal to donors for a year and a half. We're not going to bother with Texas and Florida. They're too expensive to do, and they had too many incumbents to defend in Ohio and Pennsylvania and all of that. Then Allred just kept hanging around. So they thought maybe late money, but this is, you don't just flip a, notice we haven't seen any big flips tonight in general. You don't just flip a state in 3 weeks. You don't just show up in 3 weeks and think magically things are going to happen. Not with how embedded, not with how nationalized our conversation is, not with how polarized we are. And this is a case where at some point the Democratic Party, if they're serious about Texas, they're going to spend 4 years there. You can't just do it in 4 weeks. And it's the same story we just talked about in Florida. And this is the difference. Again, I go back. The Republican Party for the last 4 years has been much more aggressive. You heard Garrett talk about it, and the Trump campaign is flexing its muscles because it worked. They had massive voter registration campaigns for the last 3 years. And it has padded them. It's what Texas, look, Republicans got stronger in Texas. I mean, that Latino vote in Texas, when you've got over 60% Latino men moving in Texas towards the Republicans, that's realignment. That is realignment that's happening.
And I think we have another Senate call to make now in the, I believe, in the state of Maryland. NBC News projects that in Maryland, Angela also Brooks will win. And there's against Larry Hogan, former governor, difference 171,000 votes there.
So here's the Senate at this hour. The Republicans have picked up 1 seat. They need to pick up 2 to take control of the Senate. And the ones hanging in the balance right now in terms of that are Ohio, Sherrod Brown in the fight for his political career in Ohio. We've got Michigan we're watching. Alyssa Slotkin trying to hold on to that seat after her retirement there.
And Montana would be the flip. If it flips, that would give Republicans control of the Senate. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Montana and Ohio are the 2, if you are Republicans, that you're watching quite closely to see if they can flip those states. I do think it's notable when you think about the realignment that Chuck is talking about. You think about the state of Pennsylvania, the Latino voters, the split there. The fact that what Trump is running on, remember, is his first day in office to start a mass deportation plan. A lot of folks have asked him for details about what would that actually look like. He has not given them, but it is notable that he's increased his support based on what we're seeing so far amongst Latino voters, that is something that has resonated with them. Democrats making that late play to try to win them back. And so far, based on what we're seeing, didn't work.
And yet the exit polling also shows that more people do not want to see immigrants deported if they are here illegally here. They want to see a pathway to legal migration, legal immigration here, which is another nugget we got from the exit poll. So interesting dynamics at play on this issue.
All right, let's go over to Tom Llamas. He's got the big board going, and the state of Iowa, which has been of intrigue since a Saturday night surprise at the poll.
It was a huge question mark. If you woke up on Sunday and you watched Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, it was a huge headline, right? Yes. People woke up on Sunday, and according to the Des Moines Register poll, Harris was up by 3 points within the margin of error. The politics desk just pointed this out to me. Let's dig in because we have some voting data now. 45% of the vote is in, but let's look at Polk County. This is the biggest county, the most people. This is Des Moines, the capital here. So she's on top, 55% to 43%, 94% of the votes in. But look at Trump's margins. Trump's actually doing better than he did in 2020. Let's go over here to another county, Dubuque County, 94% of the votes in. Trump's at 52. Trump was at 50. So he's growing in both those districts, in both those counties, I should say. For Democrats to flip Iowa, he has to be doing worse in those counties. Again, look, there's still a lot of vote out. A lot of vote has to come in. But this would be a shocker if Republicans lost Iowa. Remember, Trump won 98 of the 99 counties in the primary. And when you go back to elections past, he won by 8 points in 2020, and he won by 9 points in 2016. So my point here being that if the trend was Iowa was going to turn blue, she has to be turning out the votes in Des Moines and in other places, and right now that's not happening.
We actually have a call right now. Let's play the music here. Projection, and Iowa will go red, as was widely expected until that poll. Right there, Trump wins the 6 electoral votes of Iowa. And so we can see the breakdown there with about half the vote counted there. So there was this thought that perhaps because of his restrictive abortion ban that just went into effect in July, and this highly respected pollster coming out, that perhaps there was going to be a wave of independent women who could somehow turn this red state blue. But this was not to be, Chuck.
No, I mean, look, this is a miss because this looks exactly the way Iowa looked 4 years ago. You know, we're in margin of error range there. So, look, she thought she had found something with
the pollster that we're talking about, yeah.
Independent women looking like they were choosing, and certainly we've seen some evidence of it in national polls, a point or two here or there. And look, I've seen it throughout the Midwest, but it's a point here or a point there. I don't know if it's enough to make up for the loss of voters of color that have cleared. I mean, that continues to me to be the big story of the night, is the shift among Hispanics. Look, Hispanic voters are swing voters, and I think, you know, what's interesting here is the Republican Party treated them the same way they treated white working class voters. They courted them the same way they treated white working class voters. The Democratic Party has spent a lot of time treating it as an identity group, you know, and you know, whether it's Latinx, which sort of fell flat. And so there's been a lot of hand-wringing about this inside Democratic circles, a real split, like, you know, it was a total misread sort of by the coastal strategists when it comes to how to target working class voters of color. And I think we're starting to see sort of a working class coalition start to drift to the right. You know, before, Donald Trump had working class whites. Now he's adding working class Hispanics and working class, not necessarily seeing evidence of working class African Americans, but adding working class Hispanics. That becomes a very durable majority.
Well, another way of saying that is the education gap.
Well, it's the same thing.
College educated or non-college educated.
It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It matters your education.
But is it Donald Trump or is it the Republican Party?
Or is it the Democratic Party? Okay, meaning, like, I don't, you know, it's the Democrat. It is, first of all, Latino voters in many ways are driven by the same issues. And there's one issue in particular, actually, that Republicans align closer with Latino voters, or Latino voters align more closely with the Conservative Party, and that's school choice. And that has been, and you can't help but wonder, both Florida and Texas have been very aggressive about expanding school choice. Where have Republicans made the greatest gains among Hispanic voters? Florida and Texas. So education, the economy, those issues, bread and butter issues, and that is how they talk to them. I'm not saying Democrats weren't, but for the sort of the cultural issues don't play as well with Hispanic voters as they may with college-educated whites or even African Americans.
And we saw the Trump campaign hammer some of those issues in ads over and over again. Take a break right here. Coming up next, things are heating up. The votes are rolling in. We've got the latest on the battleground states, and we're inching closer to that 270 mark. Stay with us. Election night rolls on.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.